This is NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Beat.
And we're back talking about the cloud. I'm so excited. The conversation was really just getting ripping. So who wants to jump in first? You were all fighting before, so...
So I'll pick up a little bit of what we were discussing on earlier, right? So Technicolor, a surprise to most people, is a post-production facility. We have a ton of digital artists that work on productions for you. But software as a service is a very different model for Technicolor, right? And in fact, our project was specified from day one that you can order it from us, you can order our storage and our compute capability, regardless of whether you use any other creative services from Technicolor. And that's really important because you're a producer, you want to use whatever is your best of breed. Now, I'm hoping, of course, that Technicolor is the best of breed for all the services that go along with it. We have great people, but we have plenty of productions that go through our system that don't use Technicolor for anything other than Pulse. And we integrate with third-party programs like Shotgun or with AutoDCP or whatever, where they talk to our API and they can get data out of our system, they can trigger our system, perform computation and do work for them. And that works great, right? And that way you get to pick whatever is best for you.
But as a service company, when you're offering software as a service, it's a different kind of service model. And I wonder if you can talk about the expectations that clients may have based on doing things the old way versus doing things the new way.
Yeah, it is a very different way for them to work, right? We give them a lot more control over their own process. So when you dealt with a brick and mortar post-production facility, often it was a black box to a producer, right? You hand your footage into us, and then some period of time later, it's been changed, worked on, whatever, and they hand it back to you, right? So and that was the only interaction you had.
With the vault guy.
Yeah, exactly. You stopped at the vault, and then eventually the vault guy sent you another set of drives back, and you go, we're done, right? Okay. So we give you a lot more control and visibility with our software service, right? You can submit your requests directly in, you can see if there's any problems with them, you can look at them and correct them if there's an issue right away, rather than waiting for somebody to give you feedback from the facility to eventually do it. And because of that, we have it running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you submit your stuff, you're not waiting for somebody inside the brick and mortar facility to go do the work, right? The system will kick it off for you automatically and send you an email notification, says your stuff's ready, here it is. So it's a very different way of working with a facility than the typical brick and mortar production.
And it's also a very different cost structure.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So you're changing people's mentality from a capital expenditure where they're investing in hardware, recurring support cost, right, which is always a percentage of whatever the hardware cost was. It's the traditional, and in the software model, same thing. Now you're going to operational expenditures where you can actually go with the flow, right? If you want to choose this Lego to put down here and then later on swap it out for a different Lego brick or block, perfect. You know, that's the power of SaaS. You get those options. You're giving your customers more options, more availability, more scalability, and they can make a business decision about something versus being cornered into a long-term relationship that it's very hard for them to get out of, right? And so that's one benefit. The other benefit is, I think from an internal operational model, you have the coordination of product, engineering, and customer support or customer success, whatever you want to call it. Those three groups drive how a SaaS model functions and performs. It's a very different world. You are much more approachable, to Daryl's point, to change something, add a feature in, request a function or some new capability, because that customer is telling you, and these other customers are telling you, this is what they need, and there's a demand for it. And you're not worrying about like a 6 or 12-month cycle of modifying a product.
You are preaching to the choir, brother. I mean, I think that the cloud is amazing, but my question is, what happens when that producer is used to Steve in the control room calling him and saying, producer dude, your levels are way off, right? I mean, there's a transfer of responsibility there that's different, isn't it, in the traditional service model in Hollywood, and how does that get addressed?
I'm not sure if that's different other than the role and what they do in their role changes a little bit?
Right, we'll give you both choices actually. We'll let you QC your own content, right? Or you can go ahead and hire that from our creative services team, right? So in our model, we provide both, right?
No,
we do have our post facility.
That makes perfect sense, but it's not necessarily the freebie, it just happens thing than it was before, right?
That manpower, that person who has to watch your stuff and QC it still takes time and money. So unfortunately,
that continues to be some of the, even especially since I sit on the whatchamacallit, the packaging side of things with Auto DCP, that actually is one of our struggles today, is we know things are technically correct, but we do not know whether or not the content, if it goes through the process in a fully automated sense, we don't know if what you actually gave us actually makes sense to turn into your deliverable. The old expression in our world is garbage in, garbage out. So there are ways that we're starting to look at how can we use the cloud? Can we automate QC? Yes, we can automate QC. Can we automate QA? No, but can we utilize the cloud to maybe talk to, or say there's 1,000 theaters worldwide right now and one is actually available, can we have that content immediately show up at that place to do QA on it? Yeah, can we make that and be a lot more cost effective? That's kind of cool.
QC validation. I mean, I think some of it switches gears from automate QC, but then you still need to validate it. And if you can validate it, if you can validate it across a spectrum of availability, different regions, different geographical areas, you're automatically adding the scalability to it.
And we are already, actually, it's interesting, I happen to know some of the work Jeanette has actually done in the past. The concept of releasing this product to multiple languages, multiple countries throughout the world, you already have kind of that process in place, but it's manual. You have people that are receiving this in all their different offices are physically looking at that stuff and using FedEx methods or whatnot. And today we have the capability, again, put it in one storage center, have people come in here and monitor the stuff and QA the stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I love the FedEx man. He's a very attractive dude. But as a producer, it's a budget killer, right? It just, all that shipping is a nightmare. And I think the elimination of that step is one of the key advantages of the cloud. But, go ahead.
There's a balancing of concerns here that's worth keeping in mind. With most cloud providers, they don't charge you to push data in, but they charge you to pull your data out. And this is where people production companies, when they first start experimenting with the cloud, kind of quickly decide that it doesn't work for them because it's slow to get their data out, it's costly to get their data out. They couldn't switch from, Google to Amazon or back and forth very quickly unless they just keep copies of data in all of them and delete it when they're done instead of pulling it out. When you have these kinds of new business models, there's a lot of subtlety and complexity to it that can easily get it's basically muddying the waters these days, right? So you have software as a service, that's one concept. So instead of, say, an actual application on your desktop, you have a service. The benefits of that are that it can go bigger than an application on your desktop can. It can store more data. You can collaborate automatically across the world with people. But a disadvantage might be that you've got some kind of level of lock-in where your data is there now, and you can't easily get it back out again.
Oh, you mean sometimes people hold your data hostage?
The word hostage is not used anymore.
How mean?
And one way around that is to automate, again, going back to APIs. The power of the APIs is that you can build automations, integrations, and you can automate the flow of that content coming down. So if you've got, for example, let's say a broadcast model, right? Maybe not TV, film, but broadcast, you've got 50 stations, nationwide, or 180 stations nationwide, and you've got content going up there and then automatically pointed down for those stations to go to play out right away. That works. That's feasible. That cuts down an enormous amount of hassle, and as long as you've got the bandwidth, again, we always talk about that being the common denominator, it works. The other thing that we have, and just to pitch the Sony, capabilities, is we do camera to cloud. So if you want to go streamline and minimize the bandwidth issue, take the proxies off of a camera and automate them going right up to C and being pulled down automatically, time code being kept, So you've got all that intact with a lighter proxy. You can begin editorial. You might still want to do your shipping because you still want that high res. You know, you might be shooting with an F55 with a AXS card. You know, shooting raw 4K. You know, that's not light. You know, that's something that's still very heavy. But can you start the editorial work before that file actually makes it back to editorial and actually relink it back to it? Absolutely. You can even do a video review, rough cutting, all that in the cloud.
And a lot of that is changing some of the way that folks work to make it more efficient, right? So that kind of model is exactly what we do as well with our near set products and integration with Pulse. But you still have bonding requirements that say write 2 LTO tapes. Right? So now you're gonna ship those LTO tapes around. That might as well be the way you get the large-scale content in, no matter how much easier it would be to just ship it digitally, right? We still end up going back to tape because there's a bonding requirement for it, right?
Well, and that's another good point is long-term archival. That's another feature that we focused on over the past 6 months, and we offer long-term archival, leveraging Amazon Glacier, but going down to a very low $4 per terabyte per month cost. I mean, and that's the overage cost for any customer who's going to be doing long-term archival with us, and that means that they can have near-term active content, preview proxies available. They can share that content. They can push it to archive. They still have all those proxies still available for them.
Yeah, this.
Now this all sounds so wonderful. Nothing could possibly ever go wrong, right? Nothing ever goes wrong. So I want you guys to fess up a little bit and talk about some of the challenges that are in that cloud environment and give these folks out here that are listening some solid information that's going to help them avoid those crises and pitfalls.
I'll speak to one of those. All right, it goes back to the network, trying to upload data into the cloud. Dealing with a producer that happens to be out somewhere off of Long Beach on his houseboat, wanting to actually move 3.5 gigabytes up into the cloud to turn into a screening that he wants to do tomorrow. Again, we now have the capability to do instantaneous encoding, instantaneous instantaneous transformations of this stuff. But we still have some expectation problems, again, on getting that data in would be the same side of that. The other side of that, though, on a positive note, on a really interesting story on what you have in capabilities once you're up there, there was one client that said, I need to actually generate a DCP. Here's the actual deliverable that needs to go up into the system. I'm getting on a plane right now. Now they didn't do any QA, QC of this, which is a little disturbing. However, they got off the plane, they're on the DMZ in Korea. They downloaded the entire DCP as they're sitting in their hotel room, plug it into the projector, and literally, they're doing, it was a fairly important screening on the DMZ in Korea. So, supporting an artist that was doing some anti-war stuff. So there's some excitement that happens on that side that you can move this stuff around the world very quickly, but getting into the cloud can be tough.
Our cloud seems to have some audio components.
In terms of other gotchas, I mean, the nice thing, though, even though it might be hard to get into the cloud, is you can push to the cloud from anywhere in multiple locations. So it's a solvable problem. It's just you have to be aware of it. And you can have service providers that have huge, bandwidth that can push it for you. But to go back to pitfalls and the idea about software as a service, the benefit of software as a service, aside from specific features, over what a lot of people are referring to as infrastructure as a service, which is what the generic cloud is you don't have to have a system administrator doing the back end of Sony C or Pulse or any of those kinds of things. You get all of those things and they manage. If their machines go down, they solve that problem, right? As opposed to if you spin up your own account in Amazon and start managing those services, even if you're very competent engineers at, say, a post-production facility, you can run into a lot of unexpected, curves. Things like, you'll engineer typically in a post-production facility some kind of file server and a whole bunch of render boxes perhaps that are feeding off of that file server. You try to take that exact same architecture and put it in the cloud and you will not be happy. because as soon as you start, what you want to be in the cloud to be able to do is take that volume knob and turn it up when you need more processing power. But what happens when you now have 2,000 CPUs hitting that one file service, right? And it wasn't even in the beginning engineered to be a media file service, right? So it actually looks and tastes and seems like it's the same thing as your data center, but remote, but it's just kind of not, in all these kind of little subtle edge case kind of ways that software as a service can help mitigate that, because it's solving the bigger problem and they manage those, you know, lower level problems.
And let's credit who is, you know, worth of the compliment there, the engineers. Right? In any of our infrastructures, it's our engineering who has gone through all the trials and all the R&D and figured out, hey, you know, these Amazon APIs are awesome. My job processor is awesome. I've got to get these things to work in a very cohesive manner. And that's a challenge, because I mean, I'll tell you, 4.5 years in, do we still see unique qualities and issues that come up? Of course we do, you know, because we're constantly pushing, you know, further and further the bounds of which our customers need to use the service. So we're always finding new efficiencies. And I think that's a real benefit, though. That's where you get the OpEx model and SaaS working so well for you, because you're getting this ongoing new efficiencies. We never stop looking for them. You can't. You've got to always be diligent about those things. And yeah, our engineering.
And those engineers that are good at cloud architectures and have that background and have media and entertainment experience.
Exactly.
Like, there's zero of those people, there's so few of those people in the world.
Very limited.
Very limited set of people.
Specific niche, right?
Yeah, that was a discussion on an earlier talk here. Was, do we have people out there to do this? And we need more people looking into this that have the skills of media, entertainment, and engineering.
Okay, so you guys are very interesting, but you totally dodged my question.
I'm going to go back to your question a little bit.
Okay.
Let me add one to this, right? So what you're seeing from a production side is, again, more and more people that want to touch and operate on the same content, whether that's your marketing people, whether that's more visual, you've gone to 5 or 6 visual effects vendors instead of 1, right? All of that. So the data interchange between them is still always a problem, right? And making sure that everybody is talking to each other and knows the work they're doing and knows what they're supposed to do. That is as much a production problem as it is a cloud problem, right? As a software as a service problem. But software as a service makes it much more obvious, right?
Okay.
So if you're the producer and you're having a problem because your 2 vendors aren't talking to each other, you get in the middle of that and you clean it up and you fix it, right? And you tell them who's doing what and you fix the problem for them, right? So the problem, not the problem, but what happens with a cloud architecture is they go to the cloud and they say, give me the stuff and do it this way, right? And that may or may not be the correct answer, right? So what we see, what gets exposed to this is if you have not well defined your own process, the cloud is going to magnify that, right? All these software as a service platforms are going to magnify that kind of solution. It's not cloud, it's software as a service. But that's always one of the things that we have to deal with as part of our startup for shows is we say, how are you guys going to do all this? And we ask them a bunch of questions that they go, wait, how am I supposed to know what format they're going to want for visual effects? Well, you need to know, right? I'm sorry that I have to, that I have to ask that question, but I can't set up my system that's going to create your visual effects plates if I don't know what format you want your visual effects plates in, right? So it's really important to get that data interchange correct and make sure your producers know what all those are. Otherwise, you'll kind of get that very exposed when you're throwing it on your software platform.
Okay, Brian, since I cut you off, I'm going to give you another chance. What can go wrong?
So I think some of the things that has gone wrong is not something external to a client, but one of the things that we have noticed internally, and I've seen this across a couple areas, not only my own, is how we're going to make money. So we can't depend on just being a reseller for Amazon, being a reseller for people out there. And I'll go to a word talking to Josh here. We need to innovate. We need to go out there and innovate new solutions. And Michael was talking about that as well. We need to actually figure out, do some R&D out there. What are better ways to do our past workflows in an effort that would be in the cloud? So we need to be in, there are folks like us who are very inspired to go out there to create new ideas, but that's one of the things I think as a cloud person that's a very little secret. A lot of people out there are simply trying to be resellers of these services out there, and to me that's not sufficient.
Okay, you each get 30 seconds to tell me what you see is the future of cloud computing. Go.
Oh, wow. The future of cloud computing. I think that as bandwidth increases you get 5G working, worldwide, you're going to find more wireless workflows that are going to feed into the ease of moving that content from point A to point B. I think you're going to decrease the need for those high res to be relied on the way they are. And when it comes to production, whatever flow it might be in broadcast, you're going to find that although satellite is still there, I think you're going to find that cloud becomes a viable distribution delivery model.
Josh, go.
I think the future of the cloud for media production is that we'll stop having local heavy lifting machines. We're going to have thin clients with high-end graphics cards doing very high quality image work, but what they are doing is happening actually somewhere else. I think that's going to be the biggest next move.
Brian, go.
Hey, I think I keep coming back to an app for that. I think basically we're going to have a collection, a whole bunch of post apps or production apps or VFX apps living up in the cloud that have the ability to talk to one another, and a producer will put them together into a pipeline of things to accomplish their tasks they need to do.
Daryl, go.
I think everybody has hit a lot of good points, but I think in the future model of the world, physical post-production facilities start turning into places that clients sit to review work, and they become less about the machinery and the hardware that's there. All that machinery and hardware pushes out to data centers, and now all you're doing is watching a high-res screen in the facility that you're in.
Very cool. Okay, we have just a few seconds for somebody to jump in, give one piece of advice to somebody who's getting ready to move to the cloud. Besides, use my product. Besides, use my product.
Run the numbers. check what the actual price per hour is on everything.
Hey, if you haven't signed up to Amazon to even play and even spin up your own Windows instance, do that.
I would say also, do your research on the providers, but realize that there's lots of us who have already done that for you. Mm-hmm. And we can make that life a lot easier for you than investing 2-3 years of man-hour resources to try and figure something out.
Okay.
Yeah, your pipeline team has to sit down with any of us, whichever vendor you're going to use with, and then talk about what's the best fit of those services with how you want to do your work. Because it's a very flexible solution. All of them are flexible solutions, right?
So let me see if you guys agree with me wearing my producer hat now. You probably want to have a plan first, yeah?
Always good.
Know, like Daryl said, know what you need.
Know what you need.
If you don't know anything about the cloud, I think the best thing is exactly what Daryl's saying. Talk to somebody, a company or individuals who have a lot of experience with it, which you won't find many of. You will find a few companies though, and see if they can help you in some specific, put your toe in the water kind of way to start adopting the cloud into production.
I'd also say that an important ingredient is not just them having a plan, it's us listening to them and understanding what they're used to, how they work, and then offering an alternative.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for being with us today and giving us all of this great data about being in the cloud. And we're going to be back real soon with another interesting panel here at NAB Show Live.
This is Tammy DeBruns from Master Control at WPLG TV in South Florida. I've been here for 33 years, and you are watching the NAB Show Live.
Hi, I'm Patrick Harris with Gallaudet University TV, and you're watching NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Beat Magazine.
Hi, this is Cliff Mitchell, Production Director for Federated Media in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and you're watching NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Beat.
I know broadcasters will continue to find opportunity in the choices we make, choices that allow broadcasters to continue serving the American people.
And we'll see you at the 2017 NAB show.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah.
Howdy, I'm Jack Harris, a quasi-journalist with News Radio 970 WFLA, Tampa Bay. You're watching NAB Show Live.
I know broadcasters will continue to find opportunity in the choices we make. Choices that allow broadcasters to continue serving the American people.
And we'll see you at the 2017 NAB show.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Basie, and I shoot for NCIS. You're watching NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Speed.
Live from Las Vegas, this is NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Speed.
Hey, welcome everybody to this afternoon show on something that we haven't actually addressed before, and that is we're going to be talking about live streaming, but we've got the weather involved in the live streaming. We tried to get them last year, but we couldn't get the weather guys, so great idea. I would like to introduce my two guests. I'm absolutely delighted to have Dr. Joel Myers from AccuWeather and Scott Elliott from the Weather Channel.
Thank you.
And we will have another guest in a moment, but unfortunately she's rushing away from her stand and she will join us shortly. And that is Michelle Munson from Aspera. Gosh, with all the new technology and people are streaming this, that, and the other, is there really a market for streamed? Is it growing? Is it just a fad? What's happening in the market for live streaming?
Certainly video is more and more important, and streaming is going to be more and more important in a lot of areas. For weather, people are not going to watch long form shows, not like sporting events and so on. They're going to want the relevant information quickly, and so it's going to be different in a lot of respects because it's going to be the flat content, as we refer to it, the basic information, combined with video as is needed, particularly when severe weather is a threat and lives are at stake.
Now, today, when you're live streaming, you have no idea as a content provider what they're going to be actually looking at the content on. Could be a smartphone, a small one, a big one, an iPad or whatever. Does that cause an issue in creating content for live streaming?
I think that it's a given that people are going to watch live streaming on mobile.
But which mobile?
They're probably going to watch it in terms of devices, iOS and Android devices. So we see probably 92% of our audience are on mobile phones versus tablets. And they're coming in looking for weather. 83% of the people we survey are looking for weather multiple, either at least once a day. But I think where live streaming is coming in is as a fill-in to information that's constantly changing. So if I get a broadcast in the morning while I'm getting ready for work at 6:30, those broadcasts, they change rapidly, and people want to check in more. And this is a way for broadcast to actually get to mobile as people are moving around. So I think it's a very critical element here of hanging on to, transferring your broadcast audience, over to your mobile device audience.
And I think as you and I chatted last year, Joel, that with climate change, we're going to be having weather changing a lot quicker in different areas and having extremes to deal with. So,
well, that's a different topic, I think, but we're probably not going to have enough time to cover today. But certainly people get the weather in a lot of different forms and consume it in a lot of different ways and all these different devices. And at AccuWeather, we do provide it, whatever the size is, the tablet, the type, whether it's Android, iOS, Windows, and so on. So we make sure that AccuWeather information, videos, and such are available on all the different devices and are scaled and make sense and are presented in the best possible way. And that's important, so that's meaningful, and no matter what kind of device people have.
So how can newscasters sort of use technology to make live streaming more engaging for the viewer? I mean, weather's come a long way. I remember as a kid, it used to be really boring with little things that they stuck with magnets onto the screen behind them. So, but what can we do today to really make it exciting?
Well, I think you'll see on the show floor the kind of things that we use ourselves, and it was available now to television stations. We're very excited about the Storyteller, which we sold about 250 of those to major stations around the world, from TV Globo or nearly 200 in the United States, the television stations, 14 of the top 15 markets use it. And now we've introduced this year a top-of-the-line weather system that uses all of the capabilities of the Storyteller, the interactivity, because the Storyteller is like a storefront. Stations are already using it for news, sports, election results, crime data, and a lot of the content. Some of it we provide traffic information and all the capabilities of showing all of these kinds of components of news on television in the same way that consumers are used to consuming information on their tablet or their smartphone, that kind of format. So it resonates. But now with the weather that way, with different videos simultaneously and this storefront to display the weather, I think it's going to revolutionize the way people consume weather. And also they'll be able to put this right on their site or into their app. So once you'll have to see it to believe it, but it's going to really be part of that new generation of displaying weather both on television and on digital, and whatever means people consume it on digital.
So I think people want to interact with, they want to interact with their weather or whatever their topic is more. I mean, more and more you find that people don't just want to watch the story, they want to be part of the story. And live streaming gets them there, because you have to ask yourself the question of, why is it that people ran away from appointment TV because they didn't want to sit down at 6 at night and watch something, and now it seems like they're coming back to appointment TV, because live streaming is kind of appointment TV. And I think what the difference is that it can be interactive. And you ask about tools. I've seen some very innovative things that broadcasters are doing, especially some of the younger Mets, who, for whatever reason, maybe they're better at the multitasking, if that's, not actually a myth. But the ability to, do emoticon streams and say, I like what I'm seeing, or to comment, or even in some cases to, attach content. So I want to be part of the story. This is what's happening in my area. And so I also think you're going to see not just the weather enthusiasts, which is, we always think of our audience as, kind of 10% of the weather weenies who love all of, the techniques and science of weather, and then the 90% who kind of the lifestyle users. Who just, how am I going to dress my kids?
Can we have a barbecue tonight?
Can we have a barbecue tonight? Right. What are we doing this weekend? So I think it really introduces a new set of behaviors that are going to be very exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, the weather's different than anything else. A football game lasts 3 hours and 10 minutes, and then it's over. You can look at replays, but you have to wait till next Sunday or next Saturday to watch the next game. But the weather's a continuing story, 24/7. It's always unfolding, it's always changing, and so the story never ends. And so that's how it's different than everything else. Also, it impacts people directly. 27% of the people who watch television are sports fanatics, but that means 70-some% are not. But the weather affects everybody in some way or other. And, you know, over the last 30, 40 years, humans have gotten control of a lot of aspects of their lives. We're less and less dependent on things that can go wrong. The car won't start, or things that used to interrupt our activities that we couldn't count on. But today, most of those things run flawlessly. Of course, there are a few exceptions here or there. But the weather is still that thing that interrupts all kinds of things, not only the barbecue, but so many different things. And so it's more of a factor for people's lives than ever before. And it's also a safety factor. You know, over 100,000 people a year around the world die due directly to weather. So that's when there's heightened interest in all kinds of weather content. And, you know, AccuWeather is proud of the fact that we've saved tens of thousands of lives over our 55 years. And so lives and your welfare is at stake at times, and then you need accurate information, and you need it right away.
So when you have a severe, you know, weather situation that breaks, how quickly can you put a story together to live stream it?
Well, come on the show floor here, and we'll show you instantaneously. Second by second now, and with this new system, you can get it right on air. The television stations themselves can put it right on there while you're doing the show.
Right.
And new information comes in, it comes right up on the system. And they can, of course, also stream that and put that right on their site and on their apps, so that no matter how people are consuming information from that television station, it's there in real time, and I mean real time. And of course, when tornadoes are bearing down or some other life-threatening information, seconds do count. And so that's a great question. That is key.
So I think there's kind of a dual role here in severe weather situations, and one is getting that message out, you know, to the second with no delay, especially when they're fast developing things like tornadoes. And so this brings up the very interesting question of how do you engage people with live streaming, because live streaming kind of comes after that alert. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. I want to get the alert out there. I want to get it to a mobile device, and then I want to follow up with the types of information that might be useful after I've alerted you. So, what do you do in this type of situation? What do you do after this this type of situation? And so you can kind of follow up with explainer pieces in the case of something like a tornado. Then you get situations that are a little bit more of a long fuse situation. So you'll get in New England we'll have a 3-day blizzard, and they'll want to go wall to wall at certain times, especially as the critical part of the storm is developing. And that's when you want to send alerts out and have people tune in and let them kind of drink as much as they want to drink. From a live stream. And that's something that complements what's happening on broadcast. And I can speak directly to audiences. I can be very, very geo-specific. So we target our audiences so we know where the blizzard line is, where it's going to be freezing rain, where it's going to be snow.
With a lot of content that gets live streamed, so for example the soccer game or the football game, somebody might want to watch it a week later if they've been on vacation. But with weather, they don't particularly want to watch what the weather is like. So do you store the live streamed weather, or does it just get thrown away? What actually happens with storage?
I think so we have a very innovative station in New Hampshire, and there's a young woman there who's a Met, and she does live streams, and she'll get, she's in a DMA outside of Boston, but she'll get 5,000 people kind of trickling in over a 5 or 7 minute live stream. And she'll do one when someone's, she's driving to work with her husband. And people come in and they comment, it's very active. I went back and I looked at one of those throughout the day, and even up to 6 hours later, from after she ended to 6 hours later, she had another 5,000 people come in and watch the content. So storing weather for a period of time makes sense. After the day, you know, I think forget about it. But people are coming in for the information and also the connection. So I think it's important to talk about why people come into live stream and who the person is broadcasting it, because they have a lot to do with holding and stimulating the audience.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends on the content. Now, that woman you're talking about, she brings in teaching around it and some things that don't get stale. But the weather story, what's happening, gets stale, is a stale 5 minutes later. So it does have to be constantly refreshed. But people are interested in learning. So we do store and have many videos that explain different aspects of the weather, how a hurricane works, and all of these educational, weather-wise kind of things. You can spell it W-I-S-E or W-H-Y, however you want. But weather-wise, people are interested in that because it's fascinating and it affects them. But a tornado warning an hour later, of course, is irrelevant, totally.
Okay, I am delighted, Michelle, thank you for making it. So I'd like you all to welcome Michelle Munson, who is CEO from Aspera. I'm delighted that you come to meet us. I don't know what you caught, but we've been talking a little bit about live streaming of weather. So let's talk a little bit more generally. Michelle, could you talk us about, or mention and comment on storing, cataloging, and distributing live feeds?
Sure. So Aspera,
what sort of challenges does that give you?
Some of the challenges involved with that. So first and foremost, Aspera has been dealing in file-based data for over 10 years and the delivery of that. With the growth of live events and the popularity of using cloud and internet technologies to support that, we've been able to move into that area with our core technology, and the key drivers, I think, for that technologically are the challenges of using commodity internet and also combining that with cloud infrastructure, and then wanting to achieve broadcast quality in the process of doing that, and also integrate with file-based workflows that include cloud-based transcoding and packaging, for example. And we are previewing a new service here at NAB this year around live streaming using our core technology in a cloud-based environment with our file SaaS.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking earlier about weather, and obviously there's a lot of content that you can look at live streamed, but you're not going to look at weather 2 months down the road because it's kind of happened and it has no relevance. Is there a market for recycling live streamed content from other sources?
I think obviously there is, based on the consumer appetite. What has changed, or at least seems to me has changed, is the fact it's more possible to do that. And again, it has to do with this kind of convergence of technologies and circumstances. A lot of what we would think of as live captured experiences can now be repurposed either as delayed live or as a second screen kind of experience, or also as archived content that's redistributed in file form. And we see a lot of this kind of thing that goes from one end of the spectrum in live sports, which would include multi-camera angles and delayed live with second screen, all the way out to pure archive repurposing, which covers news, sports, etc.
Okay. How do you overcome the challenges presented by venues with less than ideal conditions?
Well, so sports is always the progenitor of these things, or at least seems to be the main force. And we've seen over the last 2 World Cups plus the Olympics, which are, of course, these days the global height of sports participation, the challenges of working out of what were before developing regions of the internet, particularly the last 2, which have been out of Brazil. And with that, there's been huge amounts of content that has been aggregated both in file form and stream form. And I think the major push in the last 2 events has been to, again, use broadband internet out of those facilities to do global aggregation. For example, for the Olympics this summer, I believe we were involved in 450 terabytes of transfer for OBS and EVS, and that is becoming typical for these multi-global and multi-week kind of events. And the possibilities are great. Also, with that, these new technology needs are really paramount.
Okay. Is live streaming really the easiest way to download and view content these days?
There's so many ways, and I think that
I said, is it the easiest way?
Is it the easiest way? I'm not sure what is the easiest way. I think the convergence is what is really salient, and the companies that are involved in OTT and particularly social media are driving this the most of all. They seem to have very creative synergy services that combine together what we would think of as live coverage along with user-generated content, along with original programming, plus really sort of purpose-built content from the studios. And everything's there.
Yeah. Scott,
I was just going to add to what Michelle said. She mentioned user-generated content. Yeah. And in order to separate live streaming from just, repurposed video, the essence of the here and now in live streaming is more in this participatory nature. And part of the attraction, I think, of live streaming is when I get to, I could be a weather spotter. There's this much snow in, where I am. Yep. Or here's a picture, or here's even a video uploaded. And I think that's one of the things that, that gives people a little bit of an endorphin rush. Yeah. Because they want to participate in live stream. There's tons of ways to consume information. Mm-hmm. And I think, at least for now, what separates live streaming out is this kind of other fresh ability to say, hey, I can participate and I can enrich the conversation.
I noticed.
And I agree. I think the weather allows that because it's continuing story, and especially when it's snowing and people are involved in it, and they can be outside experiencing it, whatever it happens to be weather-wise in the environment. It's a natural for that type of thing, and it's instant and right there.
But participating, I've noticed on the BBC, since they allowed people to actually send in the photographs, the actual quality of the photographs is really going up. There becomes a competition between the consumers trying to get noticed, if you like, in the weather situation. With all this data, because obviously we're creating an awful lot of data with this live streaming, is there a market to sort it out and throw some away?
Well, I would say that well, let me give you an example. Yeah. And you mentioned this as well, which is yesterday's weather. Yeah. So we have people that have, video streams of weather in mobile and whatnot, and we look at the metrics, and people just don't go back and look at it. And I think that part of keeping people focused is probably getting people, timing out data when you think it's no longer relevant. And we're kind of pack ratting things a little bit, which is, boy, we might get 8 views out of that 6-month-old information, and it's not worth it. Plus, people's time is valuable, and I think they'll appreciate this direction as to what we think is relevant right now, and kind of point in that direction.
But as far as the data is concerned, a key point is serving up the ads. Obviously, we're media companies, and we pay for a lot of this free content that we make available to folks about the weather by selling advertising. And people don't want to be bombarded with irrelevant ads. At least if they're going to get ads, they want them to be relevant. And so the data, you talked about the data, is important. So serve up an ad where people are, what they're experiencing, what they're interested in, and that serves both the media company, but also the consumer.
I wanted to add just an interesting anecdote about the change around data aggregation in relation to the content. I was surprised by the fact that most of the VOD and OTT content providers that we're involved in now have at least an appetite, and in some cases are already collecting real-time data from logging of consumption, which they repurpose through machine learning to determine what it is they should serve back in terms of user preferences, and are also taking the aggregation of that data as seriously as they are the content distribution. And in our world, the core transport is useful in both domains, both the live video as well as in data streaming. And this is a case where the customers have really driven the applications of the software. And I think that's going to be explosive because of the fact it's now so possible with so many cloud-based analytics that you can really get at in a purposeful way. So.
And the ad's more valuable too. And so it works all the way around.
So at NAB this year, what are we going to see that's really going to put a slightly different edge to live streaming or make it more exciting? What about 360?
Well, of course, we have 360 cameras, and we have Reed Timmer did a 360 view of a tornado that I think went viral, and we had 28 million, 29 million views of just that one video.
Can get inside the tornado?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Having grown up in Kansas, I want to see that.
It's on our site. You can check it out.
So,
AccuWeather.com.
I would say my head's been so down looking at what we're trying to get done at Aspera that I can't speak for everybody. The thing that we're trying to introduce is live streaming with broadcast quality over commodity internet for the first time. And we've got global feeds from 6 different places around the world going through our service and then delivering it out through Playout, also through some new technology we built to support that in the browser. So we're certainly trying to open that part of this up, and I'm sure there are going to be massive innovations all over this area, both on the content side and also on the distribution side.
Right.
I think same thing for, I'm not sure what's new or what to see at the show, but what we're focused on is helping broadcasters kind of convert from this broadcast medium into this new mobile and digital medium as a way of keeping audiences engaged and kind of shifting an audience that used to participate in one medium who still has the curiosity and the desire to follow, but to do it in this other industry. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of people at the show who are kind of making that pitch to people to say, here's a new medium and here's why it's exciting and here's how you can get up and running quickly.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the television stations have got to embrace and interact with people across all the media because they've got to make that connection and keep that connection with their loyal viewers, and that's the key, and that's how we approach it as well, with AccuWeather and the services we provide. But it is very important that television stations think of their audience that way.
Yeah. This has been fantastic. I've got more questions I could ask, but we're about to run out of time. So I'm going to thank you, Scott Elliott, Dr. Joe Myers, and I'm glad you made it. Michelle Munson from Aspera. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And stay with me. I've got a show coming up on virtualized playout.